Good evening. You are listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me tonight, I have two very special guests, RDV and My Bloody Pixel Teen. We are discussing the 1981 original version of My Bloody Valentine. Yes, the slasher film inspired by Friday the 13th, aka Halloween. All I'm going to say is, gentlemen, this, for what it is, actually isn't that bad, and it has some decent things to it, despite it being a typical slasher. And I'm actually going to argue my point as we dive in here tonight. This actually isn't a typical slasher. So there, how do you like that, guys? A slasher that's not a slasher. It's born, bred, lived, and loved in steeped traditional Canadian violence, which is unique on itself. A topic we don't get to discuss too much here on the Extreme Movie Show, and thankfully we're getting ready to. In the future, expect more David Cronenberg. On that note, let's go around for our initial thoughts. RDV, what's your take on this movie?
I thought it was bloody brilliant all the way through. You can really tell it's from the 80s, early 80s, the way everybody's acting and stuff. The story, overall, I thought it was good. And I disagree. I think it is a slasher movie just because he's not using a knife. He's using a freaking pickaxe. And I like the fact that you don't know who it is because everyone wears the miner suits.
Yes.
So it could be anybody. It could even be the old man who's home. Get out of town.
Yeah. Pixel, what about you? What are your initial thoughts on this movie?
So I didn't know exactly what to expect going in. I had heard the bare minimum about My Bloody Valentine. I knew there was a remake, and that's about it. So watching this film, I didn't know exactly what to expect, but it was really good. But you know what's even better? Okay, we'll save what's the best part about this movie for the end.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. So, RDV, I had mentioned it kind of half jokingly at the beginning. I thought this wasn't a typical slasher. Let's go back a little bit. Here on the Extreme Movie Show, obviously, we're not Halloween mode. We're covering a lot of horror films in general. Check those out. Some of the older films from Hammer and a few others are included. But for us, I think the slasher film generally exploded with Halloween in 77, 78 by John Carpenter. Mm-hmm. Obviously, you had Friday the 13th being a knockoff, and you had various other products that would come out that would emulate that formula, including the old creepy guy that warns you of your future, kind of like the seer, teller, whatever. We had that in all these movies. But here, way it's a little bit different despite its gore and the minor stuff is it's not dealing with teenagers. It's dealing with young, middle-class people working in a mine. I hate to say it because I think it's a plus and a minus. It was actually shot in a mine. This was filmed in Nova Scotia, so I think some of the background shots when they're out driving around are absolutely beautiful.
The houses they live in, actually was actual real houses for the miners and stuff.
Yes, and the other thing too was because of their accents. They had a little bit of the Midwestern, Aboot kind of Canadian stuff, almost Midwestern.
Especially the main guy.
Yeah, and so being in North Maine, they have their own accent, and or really northern Nova Scotia. But for me, that's a plus or minus being in a mine. But the other thing too is that, and your point, they kind of don't know who it is really, and you find out at the end who it is. I kind of like that too. I felt that being a kind of one and done movie, that it was done somewhat earnestly. Like they looked like real people, and they were. It was a super low budget thing. I think in many ways, while we're acclimatized, let's say, to the Friday the 13th and all that, this is just as good as the original Friday the 13th to me. It may not be as gross maybe as Friday the 13th, but it is bloody, definitely. I just think it's a little bit different. Not a lot of teenagers or people having sex and get murdered. A little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's something that's a little different, and it's above average for the slasher genre. And again, it doesn't have to be a perfect film to be entertaining too. What else stood out in this movie to you?
For me, I said it's the whole thriller. You don't know who the killer is. You have all these red herrings, so you think you might be the killer, and so it's constantly keeping you guessing. It's fast enough pace where you're not where you're gonna lose interest. The characters in this, except they're not kids, but they're like early 20s. They're not, they're not like, they're still complete idiots, and that's what I still like in these slasher movies because, hey, let's go. Like, oh, they said they're closing because they closed the dance. Let's go have a party at the mine. I'm like, first of all, if there's not a killer, even if I didn't know the killer, a mine is a worse place to have because somebody lights a match But they didn't have it inside the mine actually, which I thought they were going to, because they said at the mine, there's a pool table. Like, there's a pool table now. Turned out to be like a mess hall they have above ground, but and then the main story of this, like you got the two guys. I forgot what the main guy's is, but it's Axel is the guy who's now with his girl. Because the guy left, he came back, and he doesn't like it. And so you see the main guy, and he's just constantly drinking, a beer, Joe's drunk. He's the guy who owns the mine. It's his son, and it's Axel is the guy was once his best friend, but he swooped in after the guy left and took his girl. So there's that violence between those two. So you kind of like, is it going to be like the guy who left town and come back? Is he jealous and he's going around killing couples? Or is it somebody else? It's like, or is it even Harry Warden? I mean, I love this, the origin of Harry Warden. The guy came back a year later because what it was, he got trapped in by negligence of the guys who were running the mine, left him in there on Valentine's Day, 5 guys, little methane pocket, it blasts. It took them 5 days to get him out, or 5 days or 5 hours, something like that. Or I think probably more than 5 days, and the guy ate his 4 other people in there because they're all trapped alive.
Yeah, they showed him eating that arm.
I mean, the arm, and then Holly says, like he said, like they threw him in a sanitarium. A year later, he came back and started killing people. And then I love the whole suspense. Is like, well, you think, oh, it's Harry Warden. It's got to be Henry because especially when they call, like the sheriff calls where the guy's committed. They said we have no record of him.
Right.
It's like, oh my gosh, it's like Michael Myers. It's the first thing I think is like, oh crap. But even then, it's like I said, I just love the whole atmosphere. The bar, just the fact, like, just the way the girls were dressed, the costumes, it just felt real. It didn't feel really fake. The only thing I thought was kind of cringy was there's an overweight guy with a mustache who has a hat on. I'm thinking that guy, and he's getting that girl's kissing him. I'm like, she's got to be desperate.
Well, here's something to consider. They're in Canada.
Well, is he saying that? Oh, is that Canadian?
No, Canadians are friendly, nice people. We don't need to bash them. And Canadian violence is different than American. Come on.
What do you mean? We just watched this movie. What are you talking about? They were fighting, brawling. That was
let me kind of piggyback on what RDB is, and I'll hand it over to you. I think the fact that they filmed this with mostly nobodies at the time, and
which works well,
that turned out to be nobodies. I think the chemistry is pretty legit, and I think the combination of that, the location, the fact that it was an intimate setting, the fact they literally had to go, I think it was like about 2,000 feet down into a mine to film the stuff, especially at the end. I think when you're in a situation like that, especially with a smaller group of people, it becomes a little bit more intimate because you're going through all these things together. And despite the guy with the incredible mustache on there that might have been calorically challenged, as we say, I didn't think there was anything wrong with him. What I actually thought made this a bit likable is almost a harsh word, because I didn't hate a lot of these characters except for the one class clown, but they seemed real, they seemed genuine. And this love triangle, hey, the guy ran off, he failed at whatever he's going to do, so he came back, and he was all butthurt about not making it real world, so now he has to go back, and this guy swoops in or whatever. I liked how that they extended that out, because the guy that swooped in wasn't an ugly looking dude either, but he was questioning, oh, you're not really with me because you want to be with me, you're with me because he left, and we know that she had those conflicting feelings. I thought they did the best they did with it, but I felt like as a group they actually kind of did care for each other despite that. And you didn't see these guys, automatically kill each other. They argued, they fought a little bit, but they still seemed like they were all bonded by the fact that their whole livelihood depended on this mine. So Pixel, you weren't fond of the calorically challenged individual, but stop bragging on Canadians. Come on, man. What's going on, Pixel? Yeah, it sounds like you really
no. I always have to give Canada a hard time. I don't know when it started. That's how it is.
The guy lives in the United States, lower region.
That's
Florida.
right. That's right.
You're just jealous because they got maple syrup and beer up there.
Damn syrup drinkers. That's right. We have beer down here, though.
You don't have maple, but you have maple beer and moose.
That's true. But anyway, no, this film it was surprisingly good how it comes about. I like that they shot it in an actual mine. You can feel that it's real. Yeah. I think that it's actually quite tame for most of the slasher movies that we watch. even the one that we just did not too long ago, Sleepaway Camp or whatever
Yes.
it was. This is not, for the little bits of violence that it has, it's so spread out. You sometimes forget that you're watching a horror movie.
Well, that goes to what RDV was saying about it almost being like a thriller, a whodunit too. I mean, do you like that, or do you think that takes away from this being a slasher?
I knew, like I had when I was watching it, I was pretty sure that the twist was that it wouldn't be the what's his name, Harry Warden.
Yes,
I was pretty sure it wasn't going to be, and I had a sneaking suspicion about who, but I won't say it because we're still talking.
Sure.
It was the old man at the bar. For those who didn't watch it.
No.
I warn you, kids. No,
when he got
Valentine's Day.
It's I don't know. I feel like it's a little weak in some of what it's saying, but I get what they're going for, and I was able to enjoy it.
Yeah, you brought up Sleepaway Camp, and when we covered that recently here on the Extreme Movie Show, it reminded me that the camp we had discussed back then, how that seems to be a bit of a situation that doesn't occur a lot of times these days in middle class America or Canada. That being said, I think that the fact that they were dealing with young 20-somethings made it interesting, and part of me was hoping that, especially with the remake about 10, 12 years ago with one of the supernatural guys there, that it wasn't going to be exactly the same. And I was kind of almost hoping it would be the girl basically killing the two off because she's tired of trying to decide which one she wants or something. I didn't know what kind of twist.
I want you both forever in the mine.
Well, I mean, it starts off and you're like, really, a killer in the mind? But again, this is like, what, 1981? So we're only 2 or 3 movies into Friday the 13th. We're only, I think, 2 into Halloween. We're at the point where it's becoming commonplace to sit there and say, you know what? Here's a movie that audiences want to be scared by, a slasher film. Yes, they know it's coming. Yes, a lot of critics hated those movies in general because they said it doesn't matter how great you shoot it like John Carpenter, or how well you score it like John Carpenter, or how cheaply you make it or change one little thing up about it. It's stupid and it's dumb and it's not reaching to a higher artistic level. And while old school critics are correct in that assumption, it's the fact that people said, I want to be scared, I think, that really turned out. And I think the horror market, especially here in the United States, is definitely underserved. And you could tell because no matter how goofy or how silly some of these movies that were made, especially as the sequels went on, people still like to get kind of scared a little bit, and it's popcorn entertainment. Now, is it high class art? Maybe not. But like I say, for the fact that this is pretty much a one-off type film with the people involved and everything, and reading about how it got made, that almost makes me appreciate the film a bit more, because much like Sleepaway Camp, it wasn't where they're going, hey, we've got a gazillion-dollar budget here and all these A-list movie stars. They're putting real people in it and real situations, and it has a certain authenticity that I think still is lacking in movies like this today. What do you guys think?
I gotta say, the scene that actually really impressed me with the acting is actually between TJ and Sarah when they're out on the beach there, and she still has feelings about you. She actually starts shedding a tear. She actually looked believable in that scene.
Yeah, where they're looking at Doc and it's that gray sky or whatever.
Remember, usually when we get slasher movies, it's horrible acting all the way through. It's like because everybody knows you're just there for the person to get offs. And that's basically what slasher movies have become. It's a cult following where you just want to watch the person get killed and then scare your girlfriend.
I don't know. They got to show Canadians acting mean, and I thought they acted pretty mean. So,
Pixel, why are you so fixated on Canadians?
It's just something I gotta do, man.
I don't understand it either. But...
Yeah, it's just wow. My bloody Canadian pixel team. That's what it should be.
All right, we'll do a Cronenberg hero film, Pixel, so you can get some of this violence out of you. Well, let's talk about that, because I think that's a really important point, RDV, and Pixel can comment on this. The fact that you've got women in here and men, and of course you think of them having relations, sexual relations, despite all that, excuse me, it's not dumbed down where we just go, oh, take your shirt off, I'm going to count your boobies, and you're going to die like you do in a lot of movies. To your point, it seems kind of authentic, and in a sense, it's more respectful, but it's also more realistic. So I think that makes it more believable. Now, do you believe somebody's coming back from 20 years ago whacking people because of that? Hell no.
Well, that's the
But
thing.
like
We
you
didn't.
said, it's almost an afterthought because they're dealing with their struggles now. And whenever somebody shows a real hard interest in going, for this dance or whatever like that, that's when that's when the Canadian violence occurs.
What's great about this movie, if you've never watched this movie, because I've watched the Jason movies and I've seen those. Like when I first watched this, it's only one of its kind, other than the remake. I don't know if this guy's gonna be supernatural or if it's even gonna be a person, a guy or a woman, or if it's gonna be a thriller. And I like that when you first go into a movie, because whenever you watch a sequel to the Jason or the Michael Myers ones, you already know what he is.
Yes.
And that's what ruins it for me. So that's my theory, is that most people watch movies now because of those two characters. You're watching for the kills because the story is not going to really be that great.
So Pixel, when this movie came out, you had standards changing in the United States. We definitely could get away with a lot more back then in the 80s, even in PG films, in terms of language, what you could see physically from somebody, and just the style of the movies. You don't get a lot of that now these days, unfortunately. I think that's something that, while it might be a cheap thrill, sometimes cheap thrills are the best thrills. You cannot tell me, with your hatred of Canadians, allegedly, that you did not like the scene where the lady who gets the Valentine, it gets the heart in the Valentine or whatever like that, and then gets whacked and put into the dryer there at the end when the guy comes
Her name's
next
Mabel.
day. Yeah. Oh well.
That's
Mabel,
why they canceled the party in her honor.
Mabel was no longer able to attend a Valentine's party and have fun with her hubby because she got put in a dryer. As a child, hearing about that, went, oh my God, somebody would actually die in a dryer if you put him in there.
Dude, that was
and
great.
you would talk about that on the street with your kids because we didn't have cell phones. So that was an incredible scene. You can't tell me the creativity in
I
didn't say there's not creativity. The movie's good. I just have to bash on Canadians a little bit. It's in my contract. It's just a little bit. But no, what I was saying, absolutely. And in fact, with how they do their kills, did you notice throughout all this movie, even though you have couples all up on each other and stuff, there's no nudity. Even in the first scene when the girl is she has a kiss there. Yeah, but she doesn't actually show anything. It's just her in a bra. And that's before the first kill. And there's no nudity in it, which is surprising for a horror movie. Even Sleepaway Camp, which I'm still talking about.
No. There it was nudity in there. Showed guys' butts.
That's nudity.
Sleepaway Camp had its own sexual thing to it, which we're not going to bring up. But the big distinction here, and this cannot be understated, Sleepaway Camp was American.
Yes.
The other one was Canadian. And the reason
Canadians do not get naked for your pleasure. Sorry.
That's right.
They did in certain films. However, like David Cronenberg did in his early days, a lot of people who are getting started actually were able to get grants from the Canadian Public Arts or whatever it's called there, a government institute. And that was one of the big things about this movie was that, hey, the Canadian taxpayers are financing trash like this rather than whatever they consider to be good. And, state of Florida years ago kind of said, we're not going to be paying a lot more for Hollywood movies and TV shows, so a lot of production has gone to, say, Georgia and other places. This is just the nature of the beast in the industry. So there's a legitimate reason, not in terms of storytelling or budget or how hot the women are, that we're not seeing it. So I'd agree with you, who doesn't want to see something like that, but at the same time, too, I don't think it took away from it, but it sounds like
I don't think it took away from it at all. I was just impressed by that for a movie, a movie in the 80s for doing a horror movie to do a slasher, and you do have the gore in there, the hearts in the boxes. That's pretty, and her out of the dryer. That's one of the most gruesome things.
Yeah. Now, when this is your first time watching it, say it was me tonight. Yeah. I think Rob's watched it one time before, but when that scene came on, guy goes in there and like you see, she got killed, but don't know what he did with the body. You see the stuff going. I'm like, my thought is like she's in the dryer because he said the smell. I'm like. He looks in the back here. I'm like, you could, and now if they wanted to fool us, they could have had her in the back area. But they're like, no, we know you're looking for the dryer, so we're gonna put it in the dryer. We're gonna make it as gruesome as you can. I literally covered my face. My face
was smoking when you pulled it out.
Oh, that was Charbroil.
Oh man, it smells like barbecue.
That was burning Mabel.
Well,
Well,
you have to cook the.
No, but I just felt bad for the old lady. It's like, sweet old lady, she didn't do anything. It's like, I'm gonna go around. I'm thinking, especially when you find out the killers. I'm like, why are you killing these people? Like,
You know why he's killing these people?
well, couples is one thing.
we almost felt for Mabel because she may do with the least amount of screen time as possible, and she's an older
Yeah,
lady, a side figure, not necessarily important to the story.
She's important to me.
Well, look, let's just bring this up here, and then we'll bring it to a close. It's supposed to be a quick review because we're trying to cover a few horror films and mixing around here. I think a year or so ago, RDV, you and I covered the Rachel Ward movie. I think it was Night School.
Yeah,
it was
Night
a
School.
slasher film, and this reminded
Edward
me of that
Rowland.
film a little bit due to the stalkerish kind of whodunit nature to it. So I think sometimes when you have a movie, okay, it's a slasher movie, we're going to find somebody. Brian De Palma did Dress to Kill, a similar thing there too. You don't know who the killer is. Yes, the kills may be sensational or whatever you want to call it, but the point is the whodunit and all the politics and the emotional stuff that comes into play here, I think can be an enhancement rather than just, okay, it's Friday the 13th. Here's all the counselors. We know they're all going to die except for the one girl at the end that doesn't have relations with somebody, right? I mean, so like I say, I think this movie wasn't bad for what it was. I think it was pretty damn decent, just like Sleepaway Camp there too. Where would you kind of rank this in some of the movies that we've covered so far? Slasher films, I mean.
Talking to me or Pixel?
To you.
To me, like I said, these are more up my alley because I've seen the Halloweens, not all of them, but I've seen majority of them, and same with the Friday the 13th. I've seen some of the other slashers and all. It's just they go for more of the kills and they go more for the story. So the story just suffers, and they don't, because you know what? The better the kills, because people don't care about that. When you go to this, they're coming here to get scared, jump scares. This I felt gave you more of a thriller, and I love the thriller stuff because it makes you think. And and again, I love the fact that you can just sit there and actually have, if you're watching with a friend, you can have a debate who the person's gonna be, because you both don't know, and then you make a bet. Okay, this person's gonna be the killer at the end. Watch, Where the other ones, you just it's straight up. Like I said, you know right exactly who is all gonna die, and you kind of have an idea who the killer is, and especially and what's I said. I don't mind the Friday 13th or the Halloween movies, because I'm not going there for story. I'm going there for just him to kill people, because he's just going there because all he's going to do is kill people having sex. That's all they've ever done.
Now, Pixel, you and I recently covered a Brian De Palma classic, in my opinion, Body Double. Talked about it being extremely artsy, and I loved the film, thought it was great. I think you kind of enjoyed it as well here, too. But the point that RDB is making, and I wanted to ask you what you thought about this, because I don't know if this is what feeds your hatred for Canadians, which is unnatural in my opinion. The fact in Body Double is when you have these kills going on, I talk about the drill scene in there that literally looks like the drill's coming between the guy's legs going down into her skull. I mean, the way it's shot, it's very hyper-sexualized too, but stylistic. But the thing that RDV said that to me makes something like the Rachel Ward movie we talked about and some of these movies is that when there's a whodunit aspect, it does leave you wondering and thinking about it, and you're paying attention to stuff that's going on. When it's just there for the kills, you start talking to the movie instead of trying to figure things out. And I think you become more of a passive viewer than an active one there too. So, I mean, we haven't really covered a lot of slashers. RDV's not a big fan of them, but with some of the whodunit ones which we're trying to focus on, especially 80s based. But overall, though, I mean, compared to some of the stuff that we've done, how would you rank this?
I rank it pretty high. I mean, I give the Canadians a hard time, but but the film itself it's really good. I was surprised by how good it was, and it's not one of my favorites. That will forever go to the first Halloween for me. But this was definitely a good one, and I did enjoy the. Who is it? You're wondering if the killer is actually this Harry Warden. So I'd rank it pretty high. In fact, I'd rank it above Friday the 13th, even though the first Friday the 13th also had that whodunit aspect.
Yeah, and this kind of, when I was watching this kind of reminded me of those who play video games. There was a game called Until Dawn, was another one where you thought who the killer was, and it turned out it wasn't the killer. I love the idea where you actually have to be engaged and actually think about. Like I said, if you're just going there, taking a girl to a movie, because that's what they did back in the 80s and the 90s. You take a girl, on a date, go see a scary movie. She'll curl up to you, maybe maybe you'll get a little kiss, whatever in the theater. But this one actually makes you engaged into the actual movie, and I'm also biased for happy endings. Sorry, Wrong Turn, the first one was good. Everything that followed was just like, okay, now you're just gonna go back to the normal pattern where everyone just dies and no one lives. It's like it's what you're just call yourself not a horror movie anymore. Just call yourself just recycled, redundant. I want something where you actually have to like really pay attention. Psychological thrillers are awesome. I would have loved if they would not revealed who the killer was at the end of this movie and then continued on to a sequel.
Well, I think that when you mentioned that, we just recently just got done covering our review 2021 version of Dune, and I think one of the themes about it was whether you like this director or not, Denis Villeneuve, or whatever is how you pronounce it. The fact that you have to be emotionally invested in some aspect of it for you to make it matter goes a long way in whether or not you're entertained, because it can look great, they can have cool stuff, but ultimately if sparkles distract you and you're okay with that, that's fine. But it was very lean in that aspect, but I think they captured it. And I think what we're saying here about this movie, even though it's a super low budget slasher, is that the reason why it became a cult favorite is that it is watchable, it is relatable with the people involved. Again, the young 20-somethings working together in a small town where everybody kind of knows each other, and their life basically depends on each other working together in the mind. You don't see films like that today where people have a communal vested self-interest with each other. I found it to be a bit refreshing and authentic in that regard. Now, you can talk about happy endings all we want, whether we like them or agree with them or not. I think the real answer is, does it fit? But I think early on they did a good job of at least letting you realize, this movie is going to be bloody or gory or whatever when it is. But there's a reason why, so it has agency, it has a purpose, but then you get to a point where you're like, okay, we actually do spend a significant amount of time going from scene to scene where people are talking to each other and relationships do develop. Now, you could argue that, well, it sucked because they spent so much time doing that, and I want to get to the kills, but I think that's more of the more modern audience. So I got to agree with both you guys. I think it's as Johnny says here in chat here, it was dope. It was a good film. It's not one that I think I'd go back and watch a lot, but it just feels like an 80s film. They captured it well. And it's different than some of the sexual hijink type of Canadian films that we've yet to begin talking about here on the Xtreme Movie Show. Let's go around the horn here. And let's just check out some of the comments here too. Eye-popping. That's Comic Book Frog says this movie was eye-popping. That's a knee slapper too. John mentioned censored there as well. WNUF.
I mean, the killer really nailed it.
Yeah, he really drilled down to the meat and potatoes of things, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Though at the end there were pretty slim pickings.
Yeah. I think Kiss made that song, I'm Gonna Dance all over your face, whatever. Wow, what a bloody good thing to say.
I mean, it's all about pipe dreams, right?
Yeah.
This film has a special place in people's hearts.
Wow, I wish Rosamund Pike would star in the next reboot. All right, final thoughts,
Cross
RDV.
your heart and hope to die. No, final thoughts. I like this better than Sleepaway Camp. I just love the scenery and that's kind of why I was drawn to Haven, that TV series, when we did review that.
Also filmed in Nova Scotia. Yes.
Yeah. I just love everything about Nova Scotia. Probably not the weather though. The weather's probably too cold. But no, I just like the fact that the whole thing of the cast is it's a tight knit community where everything is said. So it makes it. Who do you trust? And I love how they're trying to make you think like the good guy in this movie is the bad guy. Like all throughout the whole entire movie, you're like, is he just bumping off competition, or is just just people? Because like, as we saw in Sleepaway Camp, whenever someone made fun of the girl, they died. You know? So I love it. So I love when you see stuff like this, and they purposely misdirect you. You're thinking like, hey, maybe this is a killer. I'm like, well, it's not the killer then, Kent. Then who can it be? Then, like, it can't be this guy, Well, then again, it could be the guy who's really happy, go lucky. But then, like, well, this got killed. So I love the suspense thrillers. I mean, and then plus, this didn't. You can't say this and have like sucky kills, like compared to the other ones.
No, you're absolutely right. And
yeah, so you're getting both. I thought that's why it worked so well for me. I still Mabel. Sorry, like I just. I mean, I was surprised that the dryer was still going, man.
Of course, it's gonna go.
I mean, but there must be probably was no moisture sensor in there because usually they turn off after there's no more moisture.
This is the 80s. No sensors. No chips.
See, exactly. That's why it's still going. That's why. See.
Yeah.
Making a movie in the 2000s. Oh, well, it's already done.
Well, if any of y'all have been listening to the Twin Peaks that Pixel and I have been covering this whole year, we're in the middle almost of season 3, getting towards finishing that whole thing. Let's just say this movie has a lot of the Toji Mura effect in it, and I'll just leave it at that. So, Pixel, any final thoughts from you?
Once upon a time on a sad Valentine in a place known as Hannah Germine. This song is ridiculously good.
You mean the closing song?
Yeah, the closing end song.
The end song is fan-freaking-tastic. I watched the movie. I liked the movie. But at the end, the song is a million times. It is ridiculous how good the song is, and I've never heard it before. The fact that this isn't played anywhere for anything is totally insane because I was shocked by how good the song was in the credits. I stayed through until the end of the credits just to hear the end of that song.
Nice.
Yeah, nice. And I love the at the very end though of the credits. The very beginning, you hear Harry laughing.
Yeah, the laugh to start off.
Well, it's not always a love fest here on the Xtreme Movie Show, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to thank everybody for listening. Of course, RDV and Pixel for showing up tonight and reviewing it with me. Again, I'm your host, Rob, here. We do have a Facebook page called the Xtreme Movie Show. We're trying to generate more interest in the channel because we're starting to grow a little bit. And obviously, we have some suggestions. We're working on covering those as well. So if you have some, send them in too. If you want more divisive discussion, check out our recent James Bond No Time to Die show, as well as I hate to say it, but even Dune we just covered earlier. There's some divisive nature, but that's what we do here. We talk about what we like about a movie, what works, what doesn't, and our views on it too. So Thank you for listening, guys. Have a good night, and as always, stay extreme.
So long. Stay safe out there.
Harry's after your heart.